The signal came on a Tuesday, a weak pulse from the depths of space, barely caught by Earth's outer rim satellites. At first, the scientists thought it was just another burst of cosmic background radiation. It wasn't until Mary Winters, a junior communications officer at the North American Space Command, noticed the pattern. The signal repeated every 47 seconds with precisely the same variations. Nature didn't work that way. This was a message. Within hours, the recording had been passed up the chain of command until it reached Captain William Carter of the Earth Alliance vessel Defiant. Carter was a veteran of Earth's limited space exploration program, having led missions to Mars and the Jupiter moons. His weathered face showed little emotion as he reviewed the data, but his eyes betrayed his excitement. "You're certain this isn't one of ours?" he asked, looking up at Admiral Diane Foster. "Positive," Foster replied. "It's coming from the Cetus constellation, approximately 40 light-years away. We have nothing there, not even a probe." Carter nodded slowly. Humanity had only recently developed the technology for interstellar travel, with the Defiant being one of only 3 ships capable of such a journey. Even then, the farthest human expedition had gone was merely 12 light-years. "It's a distress signal," said Dr. Lisa Harmon, the ship's xenobiologist. She was newer to space travel, but her brilliance had quickly made her essential to the crew. "The pattern matches universal mathematical distress indicators. Someone out there is asking for help." The decision to respond was not made lightly. Earth's resources were stretched thin after decades of climate restoration projects. The Defiant wasn't designed for rescue operations, and 40 light-years would push the limits of their technology. But the signal continued, persistent and pleading. 3 weeks later, the Defiant made the jump to faster-than-light travel with a crew of 37. Captain Carter stood on the bridge, watching the stars stretch and blur around them. Beside him, Major Frank Daniels, the ship's military attaché, checked the weapon systems. No one knew what they might find at the source of the signal. "If someone's in trouble, why wouldn't their neighbors help?" Daniels asked, voicing the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Maybe they don't have neighbors," Dr. Harmon suggested. "Or maybe they're not the friendly type." The journey took 63 days. When they finally dropped out of FTL, the yacht crew found themselves facing a blue-green world, wrapped in swirling clouds and surrounded by 3 small moons. And it was dying, even from orbit. They could see the massive disruptions in the planet's oceans, vast whirlpools and rising steam columns that suggested geological instability on a catastrophic scale. "Life signs?" Carter asked, leaning forward in his chair. "PD." Sensor Officer Ryan Patel looked up with wide eyes. "Billions, sir. Concentrated in the oceans. This is a water world." First contact was established through simple mathematical exchanges, followed by visual data. The Marians were an aquatic species with elements of both fish and cetacean in their appearance. Their civilization had existed for over 15,000 years, primarily underwater, but with floating cities that served as their connection to the stars. The Marian ambassador, Neela, used their advanced translation technology to communicate the situation. "Our core is destabilizing," she explained via holographic projection. Her large, expressive eyes blinked sideways as she spoke. "The magnetic field is collapsing. Within 3 months, our oceans will boil away completely. Do." "You have evacuation ships?" Carter asked. "Not enough," Neela replied. "Most of our space technology was focused on communication and observation, not transport. We have vessels for perhaps 1% of our population." Dr. Harmon stepped forward. "Ambassador, our scans show evidence of multiple non-Marian vessels visiting your system in the past year. Did you request help from others?" The question caused visible distress in the ambassador. "We contacted 17 spacefaring civilizations before discovering your world. All declined assistance, citing the Galactic Preservation Protocol." Carter frowned. "I'm not familiar with this protocol. It is a doctrine established by the Galactic Council. It forbids interference in natural extinction events." Neela's voice wavered slightly. They classified our planet's core destabilization as an evolutionary endpoint. That's insane, Daniel said, breaking protocol. Billions of lives are at stake. Neela bowed her head. The Council believes that species rise and fall according to cosmic design. Interference disrupts the natural order. But we detected your radio signals, saw your early space exploration efforts. You are not part of the Council. You are not bound by their rules. Carter exchanged glances with his officers. The Defiant could carry perhaps 100 Marians at most. Even if they called every available ship from Earth, they could save only thousands from a world of billions. We'll help, Carter said simply. We can't save everyone, but we'll do what we can. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Carter sent an emergency message to Earth requesting all available ships. The response was immediate. Humanity's small fleet of interstellar vessels was mobilized, though most were weeks away. The meantime, the crew of the Defiant worked with the Marians to identify who could be saved. They were scientists mostly, along with historians, artists, and children. A cross-section of Marian culture and knowledge, selected with the heartbreaking understanding that they would be the last of their kind. The tremors grew worse daily. Massive tidal waves swept away floating cities. Underwater settlements collapsed as the ocean floor fractured. Through it all, the Marians continued their organized evacuation with a dignity that humbled the human observers. On the 10th day, an enormous vessel appeared in the system. It was clearly of advanced design, sleek and nearly twice the size of the Defiant. Carter initially felt hope. Perhaps another species had reconsidered the call for help. But the ship merely positioned itself in orbit, observing. They're from the Zolarian Empire, Neela explained. They lead the Galactic Council. They have come to witness, not to assist. Carter opened a channel to the Zolarian ship. The alien that appeared on screen had a rigid exoskeletal appearance with multiple eyes arranged in a circle around what might have been a head. This is Captain William Carter of Earth. We request your assistance in evacuation efforts. The Zolarians' response was translated after a brief delay. We are here to observe the natural conclusion of the Marian evolutionary path. Your interference is noted but will not be opposed as your species has not yet been formally educated on cosmic balance. Be aware that your actions here may have consequences for Earth's future relations with established galactic powers. When the transmission ended, Carter slammed his fist against the console. They could save millions with that ship. They believe it is not their place, Neela said quietly. Just as many of my people believe this is our fate. By the time the first tremors reached catastrophic levels, 5 human ships had arrived. Together, they managed to evacuate 5,173 Marians, less than 1/10,000th of their population. The final launch took place amid ocean spouts that reached halfway to space, carrying superheated water that would soon turn the entire planet into a steam bath. From the observation deck of the Defiant, Carter watched the Marian world begin its final collapse. Beside him stood Neela, her skin pallid and dry from too long out of water. Your people risked much to help us, she said. The Council will not look favorably on this action. The Council can go to hell, Carter replied. We may be the least advanced spacefaring race in this galaxy, but today we've proven we're the only ones with a conscience. As the Defiant prepared for the long journey home, Carter recorded his final log entry. We came too late to save a world. But perhaps we've arrived just in time to change the galaxy. 6 months after the rescue mission, Earth faced the consequences of its actions. Ambassador Samantha Wells smoothed down her formal blue uniform, trying to calm her nerves. Today was her first appearance before the Galactic Council, and humanity's first official introduction to the wider galactic community. The circumstances could hardly have been worse. The council chamber was enormous, with seating for over 50 different species. The architecture seemed designed to make newcomers feel small, with towering pillars and a central speaking platform that looked more like a defendant's stand than a place for diplomatic exchange. Wells took her position, acutely aware that most eyes in the room regarded her with something between curiosity and contempt. The Council recognizes Earth, unregistered world of the Sol system, announced Vorex, the Zolarian representative. His voice was artificially translated, but the condescension came through clearly. You appear before us having interfered with the natural extinction of species 72291b known as the Marians. We responded to a distress call from a civilization in need, Wells replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Where I come from, that's not interference. It's basic decency. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Zolarian's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Wells would later learn indicated irritation. Your primitive species lacks understanding of cosmic balance, Vorex continued. For billions of years, life in this galaxy has risen and fallen according to natural law. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the way of the universe. The Marians weren't weak, Wells countered. Their planet's core was destabilizing. That's not natural selection. It's bad luck. You speak of concepts you do not comprehend, said another counselor, a gaseous being contained in a floating, crystalline chamber. The Marians had 10,000 years to develop planetary stabilization technology or sufficient evacuation ships. They failed to do so, focusing instead on art, philosophy, and biological computing. Their priorities doomed them. Wells looked around the chamber seeking any sympathetic faces. There were none. The 17 species who had ignored the Marians' pleas watched in silence. The Council has reached a decision regarding Earth, Vorex announced. Your interference has marked your species as disruptors of cosmic balance. Until your civilization demonstrates proper understanding of galactic principles, Earth will be classified as a quarantine world. No technological exchange, no trade routes, no protection from cosmic threats. You're isolating us because we helped save lives? Wells asked incredulously. We are allowing your species time to mature, Vorex replied coldly. When you have watched 1,000 civilizations rise and fall, perhaps you will understand. Some must end for others to thrive. That is the way of the cosmos. As Wells left the chamber, an aide handed her a message from Earth. Public opinion regarding the Marian refugees was deteriorating rapidly. Meanwhile, back on Earth, integration specialist Paul Howard faced an angry crowd outside the Marian relocation center in Arizona. The facility had been hastily converted from a climate refugee complex, with special water filtration systems installed to accommodate the Marians' biological needs. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best Earth could offer, on short notice. We have human families still living in temporary housing after the Pacific Rise, shouted a woman at the front of the crowd. Why are we spending resources on aliens? Howard had been asking himself the same question lately, not out of prejudice, but practicality. Earth's resources were indeed stretched thin. The climate restoration projects had stabilized global temperatures, but millions still lived in crowded inland cities after coastal flooding had claimed major population centers. The Marians are offering to share their knowledge with us, Howard explained for what felt like the 100th time. Their biological computing alone could revolutionize our technology. And how long before we see any benefit from that? Demanded another protester. My children need homes and jobs now. Inside the facility, the situation wasn't much better. Despite being rescued, many Marians were falling into depression. Their water tanks, while functional, were a poor substitute for the vast oceans they had known. And the knowledge that they were now likely the last 5,000 members of a species that had once numbered in the billions weighed heavily on them. Howard found Thelis, one of the Marian elders, floating at the surface of the main tank.
Unlike younger Marians who could tolerate air for only short periods, Thelis had undergone special treatments to allow for easier communication with humans. Your people grow restless, Thelis observed, her large eyes blinking slowly. They're
scared, Howard admitted. Earth was already facing challenges before your arrival. Some see the resources we're using to help you as taking away from their own needs. We understand, Thelis said. We have been discussing how we might repay your world's kindness. Our biological computing methods require specific oceanic bacteria that don't exist here, but we believe we can adapt the principles to Earth's technology. Howard nodded. That would help, but it won't solve the immediate problems. People want quick results. In 5,000 years of civilization, if there is one thing we Marians have learned, It is that there are no quick solutions to complex problems, Thales replied. But we are patient. We will find ways to contribute. Later that evening, Howard's supervisor called him to an emergency meeting. The newest polls showed growing support for the Earth First movement. Politicians were responding to the pressure by calling for limits on resources allocated to the Marian refugees. "We need a win, Paul," his supervisor said, running a hand through her graying hair. "Something to show the public that the Marians are worth the investment. They're people, not a stock portfolio," Howard retorted. "We don't measure their worth by return on investment." "Tell that to the families being asked to sacrifice," she shot back. "I'm trying to protect the program here. If public opinion turns completely against us, those aliens you're so concerned about will have no place on this planet." The next morning, a news alert caught Howard's attention. Ambassador Wells had returned from her meeting with the Galactic Council, and the news wasn't good. Earth was effectively cut off from the wider galactic community. No aid, no technology, no protection. "Great," muttered a colleague reading the same report. "We sacrificed our standing with advanced alien civilizations to save a few thousand refugees who can't even breathe our air." Howard was about to respond when his communicator buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Alan Perez, one of the scientists, working with the Marians. "Paul, you need to see this," the message read. "The Marians just showed us something about the destruction of their planet. It wasn't a natural disaster. Someone caused it deliberately." Dr. Alan Perez stared at the data scrolling across his screen, his face pale. Next to him, 3 Marian scientists hovered in a portable water tank, their large eyes focused on the same information. The lab had been working around the clock for weeks analyzing samples from the Marian evacuation ships. What they found changed everything. "You're absolutely certain?" Perez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The lead Marian scientist, Kelva, moved closer to the tank wall. "The isotope signature is unmistakable. The core destabilization of our planet was triggered artificially. These particles don't occur in nature. They were introduced to our ocean floor through what we believed were natural thermal vents." Perez leaned back in his chair, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. "The Zolarians. They didn't just refuse to help you, they caused your extinction event." "The evidence suggests so," Kelva agreed. "Our underwater plasma technology was advancing rapidly. Perhaps they saw us as a future threat to their dominance." Howard arrived at the lab 20 minutes later, out of breath from running. When Perez showed him the findings, he immediately called for a secure channel to contact Captain Carter. Carter was already preparing for a new mission. The Earth Alliance had refitted the Defiant with improved engines and defensive capabilities, renaming it Defiant II in the process. The ship wasn't meant to match the technology of the Galactic Council members, but it represented humanity's determination to establish itself among the stars, with or without approval. "Dr. Perez," Carter acknowledged, his image flickering slightly on the communication screen. "I'm told you have important information." "Captain, the Marian's planet was sabotaged," Howard cut in before Perez could speak. "The Zolarians engineered the core destabilization." Carter's expression hardened. "Can you prove it?" "The evidence is conclusive," Perez confirmed, sending the data to Carter's system. "Artificial isotopes introduced to trigger a chain reaction. The Zolarians have been eliminating species they see as potential rivals. This changes our mission parameters," Carter said after reviewing the information. "We were planning to reach out to other isolated worlds looking for potential allies. Now we need to find others who have been targeted by the Council." 2 days later, the Defiant II departed Earth orbit with a mixed crew of humans and Marians. Using stealth technology adapted from Marian designs, they hoped to avoid detection by Council patrol ships. Their destination was a remote system where, according to Marian records, another evolutionary failure had occurred 3 centuries earlier. Officer Nicole Reed had a different mission entirely. As a security specialist, she had been assigned to infiltrate a growing Earth First movement that intelligence suggested was planning violent action against the Marian refugees. Reed had spent weeks gaining the trust of the group's inner circle, pretending to share their resentment. The aliens are taking resources that should go to humans, said Greg Mason, the group's leader, during a meeting in an abandoned warehouse. They're the first wave. More will come, and soon we'll be serving them instead of helping our own people. Reed nodded along with the others, while carefully recording everything. But what she heard next made her blood run cold. We have a friend who understands our concerns, Mason continued, activating a small holographic projector. The image that appeared showed a creature Reed recognized as Zolarian, though different from the representatives seen in official broadcasts. Your instincts are correct, the Zolarian said through some kind of translation device. The Marians represent a threat to human dominance on your world. Their technology will eventually allow them to control your oceans, which cover 70% of your planet. Their reproduction rate in suitable environments could see them outnumber humans within 2 centuries. The message continued, offering information on Marian vulnerabilities and suggesting targeting their water filtration systems with a compound that would be harmless to humans but deadly to the aquatic species. Later that night, Reed transmitted her findings to her superiors. The Zolarians weren't just refusing to help Earth. They were actively working to ensure the Marian rescue would fail. They wanted no alliance between the two species. Meanwhile, in deep space, the Defiant 2 had reached its destination. The Iui planet they orbited had once been home to the Vespians, an insectoid species whose atmosphere had supposedly been destabilized by a rogue comet. But scans showed something surprising. The planet still harbored life concentrated in underground chambers. They survived, Dr. Harmon said in amazement, as the sensors detected organized settlement patterns. At least some of them. The question is, Major Daniels added, are they friendly? The answer came soon enough. A small vessel emerged from the planet's surface and approached the Defiant 2. Instead of attacking, it transmitted a simple mathematical sequence, an invitation to communicate. The Vespian leader, Kriz, met with Carter and his team in a pressure-controlled chamber that accommodated both species. The insectoid being's compound eyes studied the humans carefully as they explained their situation. We know of the Marians, Kriz clicked through a translator. Their fate was similar to what was planned for us. The Council declared our species obsolete when we refused to provide our organic building material for Zolarian use. You survived their attack, Carter observed. Barely, Kriz replied. We had already begun moving underground due to increasing solar radiation. When our atmosphere was poisoned, 3/4 of our population died. The Council believes we are extinct. We prefer it that way. Are there others like you? Dr. Day, Harmon asked. Other species who survived or escaped Council judgment? Kriz's antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. You are not the first to defy the Council's natural selection myth. We call ourselves the Overlooked. 6 other civilizations that I know of maintain secret existences after being deemed evolutionary failures. We saved only a fraction of the Marians, Carter admitted. Earth doesn't have the resources or technology to stand against the Council alone. Perhaps not alone, Kriz agreed. But together, the Council maintains power through isolation and fear. They ensure no species communicates effectively with others. They control technological exchange, but their greatest fear is cooperation among the species they've tried to eliminate. Back on Earth, Ambassador Wells received Reed's intelligence about Zolarian interference with growing anger. The confirmation that Earth had been manipulated from the beginning only strengthened her resolve. During an emergency session of Earth's United Nations, she presented both the evidence of the Marian planet's sabotage and the Zolarian attempts to turn humans against the refugees. They destroy civilizations they see as threats, she told the assembled leaders. Then they isolate anyone who tries to help the survivors. They're not preserving natural order. They're maintaining their own power through genocide. And now they're trying to use us against each other. The revelation shifted public opinion almost overnight. Human history was filled with stories of powerful empires crushing smaller nations and indigenous peoples. The pattern was familiar and struck a chord with many who had previously opposed helping the Marians. As Wells concluded her address, Her communication device lit up with an incoming transmission from Captain Carter. The message was short but had profound implications. "We are not alone in our defiance. We have found others. The overlooked are ready to stand with us." Over the next 3 months, a shadow alliance formed among the stars. Captain Carter and the crew of the Defiant II traveled between hidden worlds, carrying messages and building trust among the overlooked. Each civilization had its own story of survival against the Council's judgment, and each had developed technologies in secret that they were now willing to share. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marian historian Solaris and human archivist Gary Mitchell worked together in a special facility beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The water pressure and conditions there allowed Solaris to work without the confinement of a tank, while Mitchell used specialized breathing equipment. Their task was to compile and analyze all available records from both Earth and surviving Marian historical archives. "There's a pattern," Mitchell said, pointing to a timeline displayed on a waterproof screen. "Every time a species develops a particular type of technology or cultural system, they suffer a natural disaster within 50 years. Solaris moved closer to examine the data. "The Marians were advancing our biological computing. The Vespians had developed organic building materials stronger than any metal. The Thorians had begun experiments with consciousness transfer. And in each case, the Council declared it was simply evolution running its course," Mitchell concluded, "the weak perishing to make way for the strong." "But that's not what evolution is," Solaris countered. "Evolution is adaptation, not engineered extinction." Their research revealed something even more disturbing. The Galactic Council wasn't just eliminating potential rivals. They were selectively breeding the galaxy. Species that displayed traits of obedience, predictability, and hierarchical thinking were protected and encouraged to expand. Those that showed excessive creativity, emotional intelligence, or cooperative social structures were deemed evolutionary, dead ends, and eliminated. On the Vespian homeworld, Dr. Harmon worked with Kriz and scientists from 3 other species to analyze the compounds used in various extinction events. The similarities were unmistakable. The Zolarians had been using the same basic approach for millennia, simply adapted to different planetary conditions. "They're terrified of unpredictability," Harmon realized. "Every species they've targeted has one thing in common: they couldn't be controlled through fear or power." Major Daniels had taken on perhaps the most challenging task: training a mixed-species defense force. Humans, Marians, Vespians, and others learned to work together despite vastly different biologies and cultural backgrounds. What they lacked, in advanced technology, they made up for in determination and creativity, qualities the Council had systematically tried to eliminate from the galaxy. "The Zolarians have been the dominant species for so long they've grown complacent," Daniels told his unusual troops. "They believe their technology makes them invincible. But history has shown again and again that superior numbers and technology don't always win conflicts. Adaptability, creative thinking, and courage can overcome seemingly impossible odds." Back on Earth, Ambassador Wells prepared for her most ambitious and dangerous mission yet. Using Earth's status as a primitive newcomer, to the galactic stage she had requested a full Council hearing to appeal the quarantine status. Her true purpose, however, was to broadcast the evidence of the Council's manipulations galaxy-wide. "If we reveal this only to Earth and the overlooked, nothing changes," she explained to the United Nations representatives. "But if every species in the galaxy learns the truth at once, the Council's power is broken forever." The plan was not without risk. If the Council suspected Wells's true intentions, they would simply deny her request, or eliminate her before she could speak, and even if she succeeded, the revelation might lead to chaos or galactic war. The night before Wells was scheduled to depart for the Council homeworld, she survived an assassination attempt by Zolarian operatives. The attack, while frightening, confirmed the Council's fear of exposure. As Wells recovered in a secure medical facility, she received a visitor, Thelis, the Marian elder. "You were right to suspect they would try to stop you," Thelis said, her voice creating gentle ripples in the water of her mobile tank. "The Council has maintained their system for millions of years. They will not surrender power easily. Still going, Wells said, wincing as she sat up in her hospital bed. We can't win through force. Our only hope is the truth. Thelis moved closer. There is something I must show you first. Something few Marians have ever shared with other species. From within her tank, Thelis produced a small, glowing orb that seemed to pulse with inner light. As Wells watched, it projected a three-dimensional image showing the earliest recorded history of the Marians. We were not always an aquatic species, Thelis explained as the images shifted to show bipedal beings resembling the Zolarians. Our ancestors were like them, land dwellers who prized order and control. But a segment of our population began to question this approach. They modified themselves to live in the oceans, seeking a more cooperative existence. The images continued, showing the gradual transformation of the rebel Marians into the aquatic species they had become. We are the descendants of Zolarian heretics, Thelis continued, those who rejected their philosophy of control and domination. They have been trying to eliminate us for far longer than we realized. Wells stared at the projection in shock. You're saying the Zolarians have been culling their own offshoots? Eliminating any species that evolved from their own kind but rejected their values? Precisely, Thelis confirmed. And I believe we are not the only ones. Many of the overlooked may share similar origins. The Council calls it preserving evolutionary integrity. We call it genocide. The revelation added new urgency to their mission. The Council wasn't just manipulating evolution, they were trying to prevent any alternative to their worldview from taking root in the galaxy. As Wells prepared to leave for the Council homeworld the next morning, she received a transmission from Captain Carter. The Defiant Two had succeeded in contacting 5 previously neutral species with their evidence. These species, while not openly defying the Council, had begun questioning their allegiance. If your broadcast works, Carter told her, they're ready to stand with us. The balance of power is shifting, Ambassador. For the first time in millennia, the Council faces real opposition. Wells ended the communication and looked out at the stars. For thousands of years, the Zolarians had been playing God, deciding which species would live and which would die. Tomorrow, she would try to end their reign or die trying. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Wells stepped onto the central platform. Her wounds from the assassination attempt were hidden beneath her formal uniform, but the determination in her eyes was plain for all to see. Representatives from over 50 species watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. The Council recognizes Earth, quarantine world of the Sol system, Vorex announced, his multiple eyes blinking in that now familiar pattern of irritation. You have requested this hearing to appeal your world's status. Present your case. Wells activated a small device on her wrist, and suddenly the air above her filled with holographic displays, data streams, historical records, and chemical analyses. I am not here to appeal Earth's status, she said, her voice steady and clear. I am here to reveal the truth about the Galactic Council and its leader, the Zolarian Empire. Shouts of protest erupted from several council members, but Wells continued, her voice amplified by Marian technology to cut through the noise. For millions of years, the Council has claimed to protect the natural order of evolution in our galaxy. But the evidence shows something very different. The Council has systematically eliminated any species that develop traits or technologies that threaten Zolarian dominance. The displays shifted to show the isotope signatures found in the remains of the Marian homeworld, alongside similar evidence from other extinction events throughout history. These are not natural disasters, Wells continued. These are weapons, signatures. The Marians were targeted because their biological computing could have surpassed Zolarian technology. The Vespians were attacked because their organic building materials made them independent of Council resources. The pattern is clear and undeniable. Vorex rose from his seat, his exoskeleton clicking with agitation. These are absurd accusations, from a primitive species that cannot possibly understand. We understand perfectly, Wells interrupted. The Zolarians have been selectively breeding the galaxy, eliminating any species that values cooperation over competition, creativity over control, or compassion over power. What Vorex didn't know was that Wells's presentation was being broadcast far beyond the council chamber. Captain Carter and representatives from the Overlooked had secretly modified the council's own communication network, ensuring that every species in the galaxy was receiving the transmission. Just as Vorex ordered security forces to remove Wells from the chamber, the doors slid open. Captain Carter entered, flanked by representatives of the Overlooked and the previously neutral species who had chosen to stand with them. "The ambassador speaks the truth," Carter announced, "and we are the proof." The chamber erupted into chaos as council members recognized species long thought extinct. The Vespians, the Thorians, the Aquilans, all stood as living evidence of the council's lies. In orbit above the council homeworld, the Defiant II and ships from other allied species maintained position, ready to extract their representatives if necessary. They were outnumbered and outgunned by the council fleet, but they had positioned themselves strategically, making any attack too costly to consider. As the evidence continued to play across the galaxy, something unexpected happened. Members of several council species approached the central platform, expressions of shock and horror on their alien faces. "We did not know," said one, a methane breather from a gas giant world. "We believed the extinctions were natural, as we were told." Others nodded in agreement. The Zolarians had controlled the flow of information so completely that even their own allies had been deceived about the true nature of their actions. Sensing the shift in the chamber, Vorex made a desperate move. He activated a hidden communication device, and within moments alarms blared throughout the council station. "The Earth delegation has attacked our communication systems," he announced, "and their fleet has been detected approaching Zolarian space. This is an act of war." It was a lie, but it achieved its purpose. Council security forces moved to surround Wells and Carter as the chamber fell into further disarray. Back on Earth, monitors showed the transmission from the council chamber suddenly cut off. For several tense minutes, there was no communication from Wells or Carter. Then reports began coming in of Zolarian warships entering Earth's solar system. "They're trying to eliminate the threat at its source," Paul Howard realized as he watched the defensive preparations. Just like they did with the Marians. The Earth's small fleet moved to intercept, joined by the few ships from the Overlooked that had remained behind. It wasn't much against the might of the Zolarian armada, but they had no choice but to fight. What happened next would later be called the Battle of Sol. The Zolarian ships, confident in their superior technology, pressed their attack with overwhelming force. Earth's defenders fought bravely but were quickly pushed back toward the inner planets. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, the Marian refugees revealed their final gift to humanity. The underwater plasma technology that had made the Zolarians fear them had been adapted by human engineers into a powerful shield system. Although they couldn't match the Zolarians' weapons, they could survive long enough to fight back. The battle raged for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. Then, suddenly, new ships appeared at the edge of the system, vessels of designs never seen before. They belonged to species who had received Wells' broadcast and decided that the Council's reign of manipulation had gone on long enough. Meanwhile, on the Council homeworld, Wells and Carter had been taken to a secure holding area. It was there that Vorex confronted them directly, his artificial voice modulator turned off to reveal the clicking, hissing sounds of his native speech. "You have no idea what you've done," he said through a basic translator. "The galaxy requires order to survive. Emotional species are unpredictable. They save those who should perish. They upset the balance we have maintained for eons. What you call balance, we call stagnation," Wells replied. "Life isn't meant to follow a single path. Diversity and adaptation are what allow species to survive and thrive." "You speak of survival," Vorex hissed. "Yet your actions may doom countless worlds to chaos and war." Before Wells could respond, the door to their cell slid open. Standing there were representatives from 3 of the most powerful council species, but they weren't there to assist Vorex. "The full evidence has been reviewed," said the tallest of the 3. The Council has voted to remove the Zolarians from leadership pending further investigation. Their actions violate the very principles they claim to uphold. Vorax backed away, his exoskeleton clicking furiously. You cannot do this. We created the Council. We established the order that has maintained peace for millions of years. A peace built on genocide is no peace at all, Carter said quietly. In the aftermath, a new interstellar coalition began to form, one built on mutual aid, rather than isolation and fear. The surviving Marians started the process of rebuilding their civilization on a new world provided by one of the former Council species. Earth became known throughout the galaxy not for its technology or military might, but for its defining characteristic, a refusal to abandon those in need, regardless of the cost. 6 months after what became known as the Revelation, a new distress signal reached Earth from a distant star system. A previously unknown species was facing extinction due to a failing sun. Without hesitation, humanity and their allies prepared to respond. As the rescue fleet departed, Ambassador Wells stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Earth, Alliance headquarters, watching the ships vanish into faster-than-light travel. They told us to let them die, she said softly to no one in particular. Instead, we taught the galaxy how to live.